Welcome to another episode of the RETV with Business Talk Library. And we are here to talk about trying business ownership again. Stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of the Business Talk Library on RETV. I am your co-host, Lola Turner, and
I am Terrell Turner.
Yes. And today we're going to be talking about a topic on trying business ownership again. Especially during the pandemic, there's a lot of times where, people kind of started businesses or had started businesses and quit and, they had to close because of the pandemic. But now, right, things are starting to open up. People are like, you know what, maybe I should try this business ownership again. And we're here to tell you, you should. Okay, maybe not. We're here to give you the perspective and the information you need to make an informed decision as to whether or not you should try business ownership again. Isn't that what we're here for? Or what are you here for? What are you here for?
I'm just here for the conversation. I'm just here to share a little bit of insight and learn a little bit too. So
this is true. So for context, if this is your first time watching, just real quick, just run down. I'm Lola Turner. It's my husband, Terrell Turner. We are business owners of three different businesses. Yeah, three different businesses. And we have an accounting and finance firm. We have a real estate. And what's the third one?
The Business Talk Library.
Yes, and the Business Talk Library where we are. Oh my gosh. So really just helping as people think about, trying, if you've tried your business ownership before and it didn't really go that well, or maybe you failed, or the idea never really materialized any revenue. Sometimes you might be like, well, do I really need to go into this thing again? Should I get a job and just kind of move on with my life? And, we're here to just have the conversation and share our experience to kind of give you the insight that you need. But ultimately, it's going to be a decision that you have to make yourself. So,
yes, I would also say, when it comes down to business ownership, I think a lot of times, when people try a business, and I do think there is a lot of learning that happens before you actually can hit whatever success is.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there are a lot of learning lessons. And I think sometimes when people look at their, a prior business attempt and they say, oh, I failed, I always like to take a step back and ask, okay, all right, how do you know that you failed? And it sounds like an obnoxious question.
Yeah.
Because some people are like, well, what do you mean? How do I know?
You're trying to rub it in.
But I
made $20. I failed. I made $20. Nobody bought what I was putting down. Okay. I failed.
I do think that it's a valuable question because
I agree.
I think the first thing that everybody has to ask yourself, if you're going to start a business, you have to ask yourself, what is or what was your goal? What were you trying to do in the first place? Because I think sometimes when people start a business and they're, in the back of their mind, they're thinking, my goal is to be the next Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
But you're selling cologne. Like, that's not going to happen.
No.
Like, your business you're not going to grow a business as big as Facebook if you're selling a physical product.
True.
It's definitely not going to happen in a 4-year time frame.
Yeah.
It might happen.
It's not going to happen in 6 months either.
If you spend, because even when I think about a company like General Electric, when I look at the size of Facebook versus General Electric, Facebook is a really, really, really big company.
Yeah.
Now, if I look, Facebook, it took them 4 years to, hit 4 billion in net worth for Mark Zuckerberg. When you look at a company like GE, it took a much longer than that because just the nature of the business is different. So
Agreed.
I do think for people the first thing is really figuring out what is your goal, because that's how we define whether it was a failure or whether it's success.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think also for me, success is subjective because like you said, the growth that Facebook saw isn't necessarily the same level of growth you can expect if you're selling a product.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like you said, it's a tangible product, you're selling cologne, you're not going to grow as quickly as Mark Zuckerberg. Now you may, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it'd be realistic, but I think it's important to understand the goal. Number one, what are you going into it with? And then really properly establishing, all right, what does success look like in the first 6 months? What does success look like in the first year? Because I think, and I struggled with this at all as well. I think going into our businesses, I kind of had this whole idea of almost like a storybook idea of like what the business should have looked like. I mean, the real estate was a rude awakening for me because that was our first business together. And I was just like, all right, this is just going to be like a wheel. We're going to keep buying more and just run them and keep going. But it required a lot of maintenance and a lot of work. So I think I probably would have had an easier time if I defined what success looked like in 6 months, right? If it was, hey, we're going to acquire, XYZ more properties in 6 months, or this is the level of revenue we should be seeing from this in the next 6 months, whatever the time frame is. But I think if you honestly don't set those goals and you don't go into the business with that mindset, then you really won't know what to measure it against. You'll be using other people's indicators to determine if you're successful or not, which is why I say people might not agree with this, but for me, success is subjective because it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. And then based on what you're trying to achieve, develop goals around that and then measure yourself back to that.
No, that's a good point. I mean, and I would say, let's take it back to, like I said, when we were starting our real estate business. When we started looking at that time when we were starting, how did you define success?
Oh my gosh. I honestly don't even know. I think I had this whole idea of like this, the big thing that was a problem. I had this whole idea of like this whole owning luxury apartments. That was the first mistake because we didn't have luxury apartment money. Just to be honest, who was going to give first-time business owners luxury apartment money? No, we didn't have luxury apartment money. And so I remember I had this whole idea to own 12 units, and I wanted them to be in a really nice part of town, but I didn't conceptualize the cost that was going to come with that, the property management, all these ideas. And it was all right, no. And then, when we ran the numbers of the down payment that we would need, that's when that really hit home for me. I'm like, oh, okay. We might just need to go for something small and start small or whatever. So I think that was the big thing for me is I think my goals or my idea of what I wanted the business to look like and where I were not aligned because I wasn't at the level and the mindset to manage a property, a luxury property, run a luxury property. I wasn't at that mindset when we were just getting started. So even if for whatever reason, even if we had gotten the funding, I probably wouldn't have been able to sustain it.
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, because when I think about back when we first started, what I kind of defined as success of that first one was really learning the ropes of owning owning rental property and figuring out, because I knew it wasn't going to be this is the deal that's going to make us rich. I didn't expect that to be the case. What I knew is that there are going to be some learning lessons. There are going to be some bumps in the road. Yeah. This is my learning lesson. Hey,
I didn't go into it with that.
This is the opportunity for me to learn and for me to start to figure this out. So the next couple deals that we do, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, no, that was a very wise approach because I did not do that. I think I just had, when you watch too many HGTV episodes and you just we just gonna come in, knock this down. Because I remember when we first started the business, initially I wanted us to do a flip project. We had looked at a flip project and we were I was like, hey, Terrell, this is great. I don't remember how much the property was going for. It may have been $55,000, I think. And I was like, oh, this is great. We brought in the contractors. They gave us a quote. It was going to cost $30,000 to bring it up to speed. And then when it was time to put in the offer, we were like, all right, we'll put in the offer. And then someone came and put a cash offer and bought it. And it was just oh, okay. And I think sometimes when you kind of, romanticize the idea of business and you're just oh, I'm just gonna make this whole nice beautiful thing, and then you wake up and you're just nah, fam, this is business. This is business. Hey, the people that you snooze, you lose. In that case, somebody put in a cash offer way above asking price, and at that point we were all right, okay. So I think for me, I did have a romanticized idea of owning business that I quickly realized, all right, no, consistency above everything at this point.
Yeah.
And I think really that is the differentiator. So I think to your question, back to your question about, hey, how do you know that you failed? If you have a goal or you didn't establish a goal, let's say you didn't establish a goal, you don't really have a true way to assess whether or not you were successful in that space. That's my opinion. And then I think also understanding, like, what was your mindset and idea going into this business? Mm-hmm. Was it romanticized like mine, or were you going into it like Terrell, where it was like, all right, I'm going to learn and grow from this? Because I mean, not all of us are like Terrell, where it's like, I know this is, and to be honest, you had business experience before, like you had owned a business prior to us being married. So I feel like you kind of already, I don't know, did you already know, like, did you learn from your other businesses where you kind of had a romanticized view?
I did. I had a network marketing business, and I had done some consulting before.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned in the network marketing business, where, like I said, I went in with the romantic view of seeing all the people on stage, like, oh my gosh, that's going to be me in 2 years. I'm going to be the fastest one to make it to that level, to be on stage. I'm going to be in Hawaii with all my closest friends. Like, me and the guys that just started like 2 days ago. That's us 2 years from now. And I went through that phase. And I think one of the things that it really did teach me, because one of the guys that I met in business, like, at the time, he was also building out his insurance business. Mm-hmm. And, he started that like right after he had gotten out of the Marines. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I learned a lot from talking to him about how he built that business and just really seeing it from the ground up, to where it's like, wow, there was a whole lot of stuff. I would say, put it this way. There are quite a bit of things and skills, characteristics, and qualities that really help you become successful in business. Mm-hmm. When I looked at what the skills that I possessed at the time, the mindset, I was missing about 85% of the things. The only things that I had that, successful business owners had is I had the hope to believe that it could be better and the will to do the work. I had none of the know-how, like the people skills, like understanding processes, understanding negotiations, sales, marketing. I had none of that.
You know what though? I will. That's where I'll kind of disagree with you a little bit, because I think the will to, what did you call it? The will to what? The will to continue. The will to, what was it?
The hope to believe it can be different.
Yeah.
And then the will to do the work.
The will to do the work, I think, is a really big part, though, because
it is.
I think it's a really big part. And I think you need to give yourself more credit for that, because not a lot of people are willing to do the work. People start and 6 months later they quit. Like, that's a pretty good characteristic to go into it, because I think the will to do the work was what helped you stay consistent, even when things didn't look easy.
No, I mean, I get that. But what I'm saying is, you can have the will to work, but if you don't have the right mindset,
no, I agree.
You don't have the wisdom, and you don't have some of those soft skills that come with being a business owner. You can have the will to work all day long.
This is true.
But it's not going to produce the result, because those were, and what I'm learning even now, in the different businesses that we have now, is that it's those little things, or people look at the soft skills as little things, but those are those small ingredients that have really changed the game. I mean, it's kind of like when you're making, let's say if you're making like a special recipe or something like that, and let's say it says you only need 1 tablespoon of this, and some inexperienced cook might look at that and be like, it's only a tablespoon, I can make it without it. And it's like for me, example, like when I make cookies, like when it says that, hey, using the baking soda or the baking powder, I forget which one it is, and which is probably why our cookies turn out the way they do. And it's like, you look at the finished product of a cookie, it has a nice thickness to it. My cookies are like, they're like this flat. It's just like, I must have missed an ingredient.
The baking powder and the baking soda always gets you. Always. No, but I agree. No, I agree. I will just say, I just wanted to give you kudos on that because I do think the will to work is extremely important because some people may have all the soft skills, but they don't have the will to work because I can say there were a lot of times where, hey, I had the soft skills, but I wasn't able to do the work. So fully agree. But what I would say is, so we talked about kind of like the goals, determining the goals, knowing what you're going into it with, like having the plan, how do you measure success or failure, whatever that looks like. Now, if someone says, all right, I kind of recovered from the blows, like I'm ready to go at it again. For example, like even your decision to, after doing the network marketing business, after doing that and still deciding to pursue the consulting, and then on top of that, deciding to do real estate, like what was that? Like, what were some of the things that you went through where you were like, all right, like I did this. I don't know if it what just, I guess, stopped you from continuing to pursue it further. But then when you were looking to kind of do the consulting and do the real estate, why did you decide to continue doing it? Like, why did you decide to pursue business ownership?
For those, it was really after I stopped doing the network marketing, there were several years that went by between like when I, started doing business ownership again. But during that time, part of it is I started to really, study, okay, why did I not hit my goals when it came down to network marketing? And I think that's something that's important for a lot of business owners is, it's one thing to recognize that, hey, what I wanted to achieve, I did not achieve. Okay. You understand that? Good. But now let's figure out why didn't you achieve it? Because in my personal opinion, other people may disagree, just about every goal you give me is achievable with the right strategy, the right amount of effort and time.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I'm like, if you didn't succeed in your business the first time, what was the reason? Like really understand those reasons. And if the reason is a you thing and not like, hey, you know what, I started my business in 2008. The Great Recession happened where it's just like, okay, all right, that's not a you thing.
Right.
That was a macro issue. But if it's like, hey, I started a business and I didn't know how to sell, or hey, I didn't know how to do marketing. It's like, okay, that's a you issue. And it's fine because you can fix that. Yeah. And so during the time that I stopped doing the business, took a break from business ownership, was like, hey, I'm gonna hit it hard in my career, and was moving up. And then I realized as I looked up the ladder, like this doesn't get easier. Like you may make more money, but I'm just like, man, they're working just as hard as if I was a business owner. But business owners have the potential to make more money than the people over here. So that's where I started going back and saying, okay, all right, when I tried business ownership before, why did I fail? Like, what were the skills that I was missing? How do I start using my job to start giving me opportunities to develop those skills? Like I spent more time with the sales team, spent more time with the marketing team. How do I learn their world? So when I go back to doing a business again, I have those things, intrinsic. Now, part of the reason we went through that I was excited about the real estate is because you really don't have to do a whole lot of sales when you're managing rental properties. I mean, your property, you advertise it. And then to make it even better is we went after properties that already had tenants.
Yes, so for the win.
I don't need to do any sales or any marketing because they were already there. So, I mean, I think because I understood why I failed, that allowed me to have confidence going back into it again.
That's good. No, that's really good. I think that's key, understanding why you failed, because then you can kind of tweak and adjust as things are needed to be able to be successful when you pursue it. So that's one thing. Is there any other thing that you would say, like, all right, fine, the person that's trying to go back and do it again, that you would consider that's important or idea for them to know?
I think you go through a lot of self-doubt. I mean, because it's very easy to be like, well, I tried this before, or other people are like, you trying another business? Like, what happened? Weren't you selling cologne last week? Or, hey, weren't you trying to sell me some vitamins last week? And it's just like, but I always tell people is the person you are today is not the same person you were yesterday.
True.
Like your situation is different. What you understand is different. What your experiences have molded you to be. hopefully a new and improved version of yourself.
Yeah.
But it's just like, as you are evolving, it's just like, and then also understanding that the macro situation is very different. Like, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, being a Black accountant in today's current environment, it helped out a lot because I mean, there are so many people that want to support Black-owned businesses.
Yeah.
So being a Black accountant, having our own firm, that helped out because, hey, right now, the macro situation when it comes down to business ownership is trying to find ways of supporting Black-owned businesses. Like, hey, the macro situation wasn't something that existed when I first started doing consulting because, you know, it was a little bit more challenging then. Plus, I didn't have as much experience. So I think just knowing that over time, like, you have grown, you are different, and the external situation that you're dealing with is different, and it may be more conducive to you being more successful in business this time.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Really, really good insight, Mr. Turner. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
No, and I would say, I think to your point, just to add to that last point, self-doubt, I think, is definitely something that challenges business owners. It's something that's challenged me. And I think really, like you said, just understanding and recognizing the growth and recognizing the fact that you have grown and recognizing that the fact that you have hopefully learned from what you went through. Because I think about even in the beginning, like I talked about, you know, my romanticized idea of real estate ownership has drastically changed over the last couple of years. I don't remember how many years now. It's been like, what, 3 going on 4 years of us owning and being real estate property owners. And so it's definitely something that I would say, if you are considering going back into business ownership, I would say take everything that Terrell and I have shared. Think about it. At the end of the day, never feel like you're pressured, never feel like you're a failure because you didn't do it or because it failed. And I think ultimately, making the decision that works best for you and works best for what you're trying to do for your family. Yeah,
absolutely. And I will tell everyone, thank you guys so much for watching the Business Talk Library on RETV. Until next time. If you'd like to see more of the Business Talk Library, be sure to watch us every week on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m.